Top of the morning to you. It is London week for the Buffalo Bills, circled on everyone's calendar. We got a lot to get to. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast, everyone. With me, the man who traveled to London with me back in 2015, Andy Young, filling in for Jon Scott, who's picketing out in front of the building.
Yeah, that's right. John is going to get some golf swings in this week, but he's not going to be playing any link-style courses.
No, and let me see if I can nail his joke. He will not be traveling across the pond, but he will be shooting golf balls into ponds around Western New York.
That is one thing he's good at.
Oh, no, I golfed with him the other day. Really good at finding the water. Andy, a big week for the Bills, of course, in the fan base. The trip over to London hasn't happened since 2015, as I said earlier. But the bigger news before we really dive into this, it was something that was expected. It was reported over the weekend, but you were at practice this week, and I almost said London Fletcher. Von Miller.
You got London on the brain, man.
Yeah, Von Miller back at practice. First time since his knee injury last November, Andy, and he was out on the field.
Yeah, he was on the PUP list to start the season, so that meant he had to miss at least the first 4 games and first 4 weeks of practice. So today he returns to practice. We're recording this on Wednesday. There he is, Von Miller. Full pads, full helmet, doing all the drills during the media portion of practice, which we're able to see. We won't know much about his status because he's not on the active roster at this point, but he's been cleared medically, he says, since before the season even started. A couple of days before, the decision had to come on whether or not to put him on the PUP list. So at this point, he's physically able to go. He's just got to get out there and get acclimated, get back to see his conditioning with pads on, to doing all those drills and those sorts of things. So remains to be seen if he'll play this week. We will find out. Sean McDermott said that Von is going to take it day by day. The Bills will take it day by day as they have. And Miller says, look, I'm ready to go. If they want to have me play now, I can play now. If they want to wait a week or two, I'll be ready then, because he trusts in what Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, and the Bills medical staff have done for him throughout his recovery process and holding him back for the past month to just give him a little extra more time to make sure that he's in a good spot.
Everyone wants to know, we have the video you shot earlier up, but how did he look to you when you were there seeing him in person as far as speed goes, mechanics, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, it looked like the same old Von Miller to me. I mean, we didn't see them doing any drills where you're going to see a ton of explosion off the line, those sorts of things. We didn't see them during team drills or line drills, those sorts of things. So, we'll see exactly how that plays out as he gets back on the field, but looked fine, didn't see any noticeable limp. He is wearing a brace, a blue brace on that right knee, but looked like you would expect a guy out there practicing and warming up and doing individual drills to look. He didn't say he had any hesitation out there. He didn't feel anything wrong. He said, actually, I tried not to think about the injury because at this point it's time to just move on and get out there and go for it.
With how the defense, especially the front four, has looked through the first 4 games, having Von Miller added into that mix, like your brain just races on the possibilities and what this defense, and especially at that edge rusher position, will look like with him in the mix now, and all the options and what the Bills and defensive coordinator Sean McDermott can put together moving forward.
Yeah, and it's been a luxury for the Bills to not have to rush Von Miller back. I think that's part of the reason they brought in Leonard Floyd in the offseason. Greg Rousseau's been very good. The interior of the defensive line has been very good. Obviously, Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver are wreaking havoc in the middle of defenses, and they're some of the better pass rushers in the NFL right now, regardless of whether they're defensive ends or defensive tackles. So Miller can ease his way back into the lineup, and boy, if everybody's healthy and they can employ him and he's back to full strength or close to it, and they can use him maybe in a limited role to start, maybe give him, 25, 30% of snaps, and let him just pin his ears back.
Gotta
and go
keep
after
him
the
healthy. Gotta keep everyone healthy, especially in light of what happened to Trey White. But he's a football player. He's going to want to get out there and ball.
Yeah, that's right. And Von is realistic, though. He said, this is my 13th year. I don't want to go out there and disrupt anything. What he will disrupt is other teams' offensive lines and quarterbacks once he gets out there, because as we saw last season, that guy in his 30s is still a menace.
Yeah.
He is an incredible player, and his athleticism and the way he takes care of his body, the way he eats, all those sorts of things lends it to, I mean, he said it today, I want to play for another 10 years if my body will let me. But he also said you never know, it could end tomorrow, right? So he's really looking forward to it. He was excited to be back with his teammates, and he said it was nice to be part of what he called Gen Pop, general population again, because, he's been out there at practice and standing around or in film meeting rooms, but he hasn't been able to practice with his boys.
So I'm split as this day has gone on. Like, I looked at Von Miller's return as teams going over to London. Why push it at this point? You got the big primetime game, which we'll get into all the crappy primetime games a little bit later on. But against the Giants and Brian Daboll the following week. But now you look at the Bills injury report, and we'll get more into that a little bit later too. And 2 edge rushers on the injury report, but leaning towards maybe they're rated. Like, I'm so split with this, Andy. Like, I don't know after seeing the injury report how I feel or if they need Von Miller, actually.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Rousseau did not practice Wednesday with a foot injury. That was something new that had popped up since the game on Sunday. Leonard Floyd had a veteran rest day. He's been a bit banged up the last couple of weeks, but has played. Though both those guys have been very good and very important to the team, but if one or both of them can't go, I would think that Floyd would, because it was just a veteran rest day.
Yeah.
Rousseau is a concern, but we'll see how the rest of the week goes with his foot. Does it ease Von Miller in a couple of weeks, or do they just throw him right into the fire now? I mean, if anybody can do it, Von Miller can. The guy's been playing forever. Can he acclimate over the course of 3 days of practice from Wednesday through Friday, walkthroughs on Saturday? We'll find out.
Yeah, so Bills electing this time around a lot different than under Rex Ryan, and a lot is a lot different than under Rex Ryan. We'll just say that.
Yeah, Sean McDermott's not walking around with a Clemson helmet on.
Yeah, right.
Or prank calling Julian Edelman.
Oh, I forgot about that one. You were there for that one. Gonna fly out on Thursday after practice. Jaguars played over in London back on Sunday, and they're just staying out there. So that unit will be acclimated to being over in London time. But like you and I were talking before that, this day and age with how things are, it's not like you're getting crammed into a small plane and just flying over there and you can't fall asleep. It's just the whole thing's a lot different. It's not much different than a team flying out to Buffalo from California or Seattle to play out here. The time isn't that much different. So Sean McDermott and company electing to just leave later.
Yeah, when Rex Ryan went, it was right after the game that Sunday night.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the media, the team, flew out right after that game that Sunday night or Monday morning and stayed the entire week in London to get ready for that game when they played the Jaguars then, too, at Wembley Stadium. This time it's at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. But going out Thursday, that allows them to sleep on the plane Thursday night, and when they arrive there for practice Friday afternoon, what will be Friday in London by that time, they should be good to go if guys are able to get some sleep. Sean McDermott stressed that a lot of the decision-making about this goes back to his sports science staff, led by Joe Collins, about what to do, how to get the most out of the players, when to leave, when to sleep. Hydration is very key, they said, especially with a long plane flight like they have. So they feel like this is the best way to get them ready and acclimated for it. And you've seen this trend a lot with other teams not really spending the whole week over there unless you're like Jacksonville, who is playing back-to-back games there.
Yeah, and we'll reminisce a little bit before diving deep into the matchup about back in 2015 when they went over there. As I recall, and this is just off the top of my head, they were pretty banged up when they went over there. E.J. Manuel was the starting quarterback.
I think Sammy Watkins did not play in that game.
No, because I looked at the receiver group from back then, and I remember this was like before Chris Hogan became Chris Hogan with Tom Brady. this was like, oh my God, Chris Hogan and Robert Woods, those two starting
Marcus
wide
easily
receiver.
caught that long touchdown.
Right.
So, yeah,
So
they
it's
were
just-
beat up then.
Yeah, so it's totally different. And you and I were there, and E.J. Manuel, 4 turnovers on his own, threw 2 interceptions, fumbled the ball twice. There was just this ugly segment of this game where every time the Bills got the ball, it just went right back to Jacksonville. You just got to have a different feeling going into this one than back then. And like you said, back then they were there the whole week. We were there the whole week. It looked like they didn't come to play at all at the beginning of that day, and the game ended up being close, Andy.
Yeah, that's right. They made a furious comeback, and then you saw at the end that Jacksonville was able to get a pass interference penalty. I think it was Nickel Roby-Coleman.
Yeah, it was.
Right? I mean, we're going blasts from the past here, and Jacksonville was able to win that game. Obviously, it's a much different team, much different coaching staff. Nobody's really around from that time.
But I will say this. What I'm leading into this, though, is on top of that, and the Bills, I think they only have 1 win outside of this country.
You're talking about the Toronto series?
Yeah, we'll add the Toronto series into that, too. But, again, new regime, new quarterback, from all that stuff, the Canada series, the trip to London. But Josh Allen did not play well against the Jaguars 2 years ago. That was maybe one of his worst performances of all time. He just looked all sorts of out of it in that one. So here we are, a chance for Josh Allen to go up against this Jaguars defense once again, coming off a week where he got to beat up on Miami and get Offensive Player of the Week for the AFC again.
Yeah, Jacksonville really bogged them down. And that was the year where they were kind of humming a little bit, and they were doing pretty well. And then they had that lull in that 2021 season, and Jacksonville was kind of like the shining beacon of like, oh, what's wrong with this team? What's going on here? They really bogged down Josh Allen, the other Josh Allen.
I was going to get to that, yep.
Yep, that's always a great matchup, and got the better of him there. Josh has those games. The offense has those games where we saw it in the Monday Night Football opener where things just don't go right, and that happens occasionally. But I feel like they found some things the last 3 weeks. They found some different ways to win. They found different contributors. They found that their offensive line is pretty darn good. I believe they have the best pass-blocking offensive line in the NFL and a top 10 rushing offensive line. So I think they're in a better spot than maybe they were at that time.
I think aside from no hiccups, Andy, or anything, they've kind of built up after the Jets game. You saw Josh taking what the defense gave him against the Raiders. You saw a little bit more of take what the defense gives you, but take a few more chances by Josh Allen against the Commanders. And then last week against the Dolphins, a near perfect performance by Josh Allen and company. And I think that the balance going into this and where the Bills are right now with the run, with the pass, with the you get Stephon Diggs his because he's going to want it and he's going to get it. But John and I have talked in the past, maybe you don't need like Gabe Davis to be the number 2. If Josh is spreading the ball out all over the place, and looks like he can do it against any defense right now.
Isn't it incredible that people were wondering if Josh Allen was no longer elite after week 1?
I was one of them.
Now, 3 weeks later, he's the NFL MVP frontrunner again.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, oh, he was the same spot last season. We know how that ended up. They went into a slide. But you're right about that. He's taking what the defense gives him. They say conservative, not conservative, but aggressive, smart, not conservative, those sorts of things that Ken Dorsey puts in his head and that Sean McDermott wants him to play like. If he's kind of playing field general and can take shots down the field and can hit the short stuff, can get the running game going, can pick and choose his spots to use his legs, I mean, who's better than him? Mahomes, maybe.
Right.
But if Josh is playing at that level, he's about as good as Mahomes, I think.
Yeah, and you look at what James Cook has added to this offense.
I just dumped a cup of water.
And Andy just dumped water all over the desk. Unbelievable. You bring a guy in to help out in a pinch, and he spills water all over.
Dropping the ball.
It's not near any equipment, so he's going to be all right. But James Cook, that element to this offense, we saw through the first 4 weeks what that can do, what having an actual running attack where the defense has to be leery of it. This was brought up in the broadcast, I think, by Tony Romo, how the fact that the Bills are able to do that through the first 4 weeks gives Jacksonville or any other opponent pause for concern not to just sit back because Josh Allen is going to try and push the ball downfield. And that is what is giving this Bills offense more options as they move down the field.
Yeah, it gives the Bills answers. If, say, Josh is having an off day, all right, let's settle down. Let's run the ball a little bit. And they're one of the better running teams at this point. James Cook has been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Hasn't had a big game every week, but he's had a couple of really nice games. Being able to hand the ball in short yardage situations to Latavius Murray or Damian Harris, that's huge. Just another spot, another option for Dorsey, another option for Josh, to where it's not all on him. And when it's not all on him, he performs really well. The Bills their record is unbelievable when he passes for over 300 yards. And those games where it doesn't feel like he has to be that guy, or often the times he performs the best because all that pressure isn't on him. And you're going to run into some tough defenses. So to have other answers, to have other options is huge for this team.
Sorry, I'm just clicking on something here. Don't want to pause everything. Ken Dorsey, at this point through 4 games, Andy, everyone's been critical of his play calling since he became the offensive coordinator a season ago, obviously against the Jets. But, man, I think he's calling a good game, and you kind of have a lot more faith in him and what he's going to come up with against this Jacksonville defense. Like a few years ago, the Jacksonville defense would give you pause for concern. I haven't dove deep into the Jacksonville defense at this point, other than, they did give Josh Allen trouble a few years ago.
Yeah, I think Dorsey has done a good job of mixing things up, of mixing up personnel packages. I mean, we talked so much about 12 personnel, which is putting 2 tight ends on the field with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. And this past game, they went back to the 11 personnel, which is 1 tight end, 1 wide receiver, or 1 running back, and used that for the majority of the game. So I think Dorsey has done a good job. I've seen him do some things that give Josh easy answers. There was a blitz that came in the Miami game that I can think of in particular, and he had motioned the running back out of the backfield, and Trent Sherfield was the running back at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Sherfield rolls out into the flat. It's an easy connection to the hot blitz to Sherfield from Allen. Doing those kinds of things. I mean, he's just done a really nice job, I think, of mixing and matching and using some of those strengths and varying formations and those sorts of things to keep other teams off balance.
Yeah, and I think balance is the key word with this Bills team right now, and I think they keep that up going against the Jacksonville to keep them honest. Meantime, the Bills defense, Andy, we know a blow to the Bills defense with Tre'Davious White and his Achilles injury now done for the season, going up against quarterback Trevor Lawrence, who had a much better season a year ago than he had up to that point, getting Jacksonville into the postseason and advancing as well. Extra weapons now with Jacksonville for him, and the Bills depleted at cornerback. You have Christian Benford banged up. Kaiir Elam maybe looked at. Dane Jackson is, once again, Dane Jackson, you're the guy, once again, to help us through this tough time. And I was rewatching the Bills-Dolphins game earlier before we did the podcast, and Dane Jackson delivered against Miami when he had to come in for Benford early in that game.
I think he's solid. I think the Bills did the right thing, actually, in keeping Kaiir Elam, keeping Dane Jackson. They have some depth now, right? Trey White goes down, which is a huge blow, and he's the guy who, of anyone on that team, has been charged with, at times, shadowing other teams' best receivers, right?
Yeah.
They don't do a whole lot of that with the other guys. But Jackson, Benford, and even Kaiir Elam, if he's pressed into action, have all seen a lot of gameplay in this league at this point. Even Elam last year saw quite a bit of time. Benford, of course, has seen plenty of time, and Jackson has seen more than either of them the last couple of years. So it's a good place to be. You don't want to lose Trey White, but they do have some depth there.
Right.
I don't think Jacksonville's offense, I'm just not incredibly sold on them yet. I don't think they're clicking on all cylinders.
I don't
There's just
either.
something slightly off about that team.
I think my computer's locked up that Lawrence only has 2 touchdown passes. They have Calvin Ridley now. That was a big splash move.
Right.
That
Christian Kirk's mostly playing in the slot.
Yeah, and that looked like that was going to pay off early, but then Ridley kind of cooled down a bit. Zay Jones, former Bill, is part of it, who I think since joining Jacksonville, he's looked the part that you thought he would be with the Bills. So there are weapons there for this Bills defense to handle. But again, I think with the pass rush and their ability to speed up a quarterback's decision helps huge going into this game, even against the Trevor Lawrence, that he's going to have to process things quick and make quick decisions if this Bills pass rush gets through that line like they did against Miami.
And I will say this is a kind of a different animal in the quarterbacks they're facing. Tua is a complete rhythm. Step back, hitch, make your throw to your first, second, read. Very accurate, very quick with the decision-making. Lawrence, not to say he's a bad decision-maker, but he's a lot more athletic and gets out of the pocket a little bit more than Tua. Obviously, he's like 6'5", 6'6",
Right.
more in the Josh Allen line of size of quarterbacks. So he'll scramble a little more, I think. So presents a different challenge. But at the same time, the defense, we talked to A.J. Epinesa about kind of maintaining those rush lanes, getting your hands up, all those sorts of things. If they can get home, though, like you said, all bets are off for the back end of the defense, because if they don't have time to throw the ball, makes it that much easier for the secondary.
Going to need Gregory Russo's height, so hopefully he'll be good to get those arms up in the air. And A.J. Epinesa, even with his ups, might not be able to bat down a ball from Trevor Lawrence, but we'll see. He's an athlete, too.
Hey, he had a pick six, man.
I know. He played golf with me. I'm a big fan of A.J.'s now.
Yeah.
Play golf with someone, you kind of start rooting for them. But that brings us to injuries as we start taking a look at the game. Like last week, Andy, the injury report looks long and daunting when you first look at it, but then you notice there are veteran rest days. There are guys who will more than likely be on the injury list while they're dealing with stuff throughout the season. But overall, the Gregory Rousseau thing pops out to me. You know, Matt Milano, veteran rest day. Right. Dawson Knox on it again like he was last week, but then we saw Dawson Knox just truck a Miami Dolphins cornerback like he was like a kid. So.
Angry runs.
I know, and he won angry runs on NFL Network. But there are some things to keep an eye on.
Yeah, Russo I would watch out for this week and see how that goes, because he's a big loss. Even with Von Miller potentially coming back, which we don't know about, they lose Russo. I mean, that's a starting defensive end, right? And he's been very good. Christian Benford was wearing a red non-contact jersey during practice Wednesday. He was limited in practice, so we'll see what that means. Poyer was not in a non-contact jersey and seemed to be in better shape, and McDermott said he was looking better than he was last week. So that's a good sign to possibly get Jordan Poyer back as well.
Yeah. All right, BetMGM is where I go. Well, let's talk about the weather first, Andy. It looks like I remember it being kind of chilly when we were over in London for that game because the media sits in the stands, or at least they did at Wembley.
I thought that was really cool.
I did too, but it was cold.
It wasn't terrible, but you do get a feel of the elements of the crowd a lot more than you do in American press boxes. I mean, I was in the press box for the Bills-Dolphins game, and you could kind of hear the windows rattling, but you don't get that sense of like, oh my gosh, this sounds like jets are roaring overhead, like Sean McDermott referred to. So I thought that was really cool to sit out there and experience the game that way.
Yeah, but at least on Sunday for the game, it's supposed to be in the mid-70s and sunny. So weather not playing a role in this.
Perfect American football weather.
Yeah, so now we go to Bills minus 5.5 in this game, and I don't have a problem with that. I see the Bills easily beating the Jaguars by at least a touchdown. So I'm fine with minus 5.5 in this one.
I honestly thought it could have been more.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're playing in London plays a factor, I think. It's technically a home game for the Bills, but it's really not. We all know the Jaguars play there all the time, a couple of times a year,
right,
including last week. So that spread, I would expect the Bills to win big, by 7 to 10 points, I would guess.
Yeah, and the Bills are the home team, even though Jacksonville plays over in London all the time. There's a home game for the Bills. Not that matters, but the Bills, as we all know, travel really well, and everyone had this circled on their calendar to travel over to England for the game. Some people are going, some people are not going to the game, and
I know a few who aren't.
Yeah.
A few who are.
Me too, Andy. Over under sitting at 49 points for this one. I always feel that these London games aren't high scoring. I could be wrong. John would probably find a stat that proves me wrong, but my gut...
It's easy to look up.
I know, but my gut, I operate off of my gut, and I always find these London games rather boring. But I do think that this has the possibility, Andy, of getting over the 49 points. So I'll take the over on this one.
I'm just thinking of John sitting here
next
to you when you're making comments about your gut.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go there because I'm right there with you. But, I would take the over, and just because I think the Bills' offense is humming right now, so I would expect them to get in the 30-point range, right? So then add whatever Jacksonville needs to get there.
Like my final, about around 35 to 24-ish. I think that gets you there. It gets you where you need
to be. That's 59, so yeah.
Yeah.
You're well over at that point.
You do quick math, Andy.
I'm a scholar.
I need to write down stuff in order to do math. Can't do it in my head. But
with your abacus?
Yeah.
Your slide rule?
Yep. I need my abacus in order to figure this out. But yeah, that's where I'm looking at a final. Mid-30s for the Bills, low 20s for Jacksonville.
Yeah, I would say something in the line of 34-17, 34-20, something along those lines.
And the cool thing is having Andy on leading up to this game is, like I said off the top, Andy and I went over and covered the Bills' last game in London. So many stories from over there.
Some we can't get into.
Right. One of them was hotel rooms were booked so late. Andy and I had to share a room and would go at each other during the day while we were working, both very passionate about what we do. Andy may say, I like to do my work quicker, and we'll take shortcuts in order to be done with it and move on with the day.
You're work smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
Or just don't work.
Or, well, we can get into that. That's a whole nother ball of wax to get into that. But, yeah, a lot of fun over there despite being in the same room and going to bed angry at each other like a husband and wife. Don't go to bed angry, but we did a couple of nights.
We've known each other 20 years. We've worked together for a long time, and we had a few spats over how to best put together our coverage.
Yeah.
That's okay. The most fun fight I remember is the night that a bunch of us went out to Wembley Stadium to do some of our live shots, and it was time to go get dinner. And there was a TGI Fridays nearby.
I forgot about this one.
Kevin wanted to go to TGI Fridays because it was close by. And I said, fellas, there were four of us.
Yeah.
I'm in London, maybe for the one time in my life. I'm not going to TGI Fridays. You guys can go there and have chicken fingers and chicken Caesar salads. And I'm going to go find a pub and have fish and chips or bangers and mash or just about anything else. not TGI Fridays. So that was cool.
Needless to say, I lost that argument, but yet still did get a chicken Caesar salad almost every night for dinner because the mushy peas look disgusting to me. I grew up on the coast. I eat fried fish all the time.
Scallops.
And fried scallops. Jerk. And fried shrimp. But, yeah, the whole fish fry thing or fish and chips didn't do much for me. So
one thing we did agree on was plenty of beer.
Yeah, plenty of beer over there. And I finally convinced the bartender at the hotel bar, which I never left when you guys would go out and explore London. I was fine just talking to the bartender there. He did
the Marble Arch.
He did end up getting me olives for a dirty martini for after the Bills game on Sunday.
Yeah, that was
he was a good guy.
We ended the night at that hotel bar often, but it was after we had gone to a couple of pubs.
Yeah.
Met some people, those sorts of things, and we would come back to always find Kevin Carroll saddled up in the same place, having his drinks, maybe a little food.
Hey, I would go out, get a little food. You guys would be like, well, let's explore. And I'd be like, nah, I'm just going to go back. I'll go watch TV at the bar, talk to the bartender, and that worked well. Other members of the media would show up every now and then, and, you know, there were a couple of arguments here and there. With some people getting
NFL analysts who were former NFL quarterbacks, but we won't get into that.
We won't get into that. But yeah, fun time going over there. Like you said, I don't see myself ever going over there again, but who knows what's in the cards? You never know. But it was a fun time, and it'll be a fun week for those of you going over to the game. I know a lot of people are starting to fly out now. You know, the sightseeing that you get to do over there.
Soccer games, people will go do that stuff.
Soccer games over there.
There's Bills backers bars. You do the double-decker bus tours. You go to the Tower of London, the London Eye, Buckingham Palace, all the food and restaurants and shops. There's just so much. I mean, London is a world city. It's an international city. So you're going to go there and do what you want and have a lot of fun.
Yep, all the homeless out on the streets of London that you had to step over.
All right.
All right, I won't get into that. Andy, let's get back to the NFL and talk about these primetime games that we've already seen that are coming up on the schedule and how crappy most of these matchups have turned out. I'm going to let the Jets slide because they're in a lot of them, but that was because of Aaron Rodgers. But
fair.
Like the games coming up this weekend, you actually get a really good game with the 49ers and Cowboys going at it on Sunday night. But for the most part, a lot of these matchups, I don't know if the NFL just kind of isn't that great right now. I mean, you think about it, you have like the Eagles, the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Dolphins. And after that,
Baltimore's pretty good.
Well, my buddy Ron was trying to get me to put Baltimore in there, but I refuse to ever acknowledge Baltimore. But I don't like them.
Okay.
I don't know. And I wasn't even a Browns fan. I'm not mad that they used to be the Browns. I don't know. Just Ray Lewis, all those years with that top defense.
Yeah.
Just couldn't stand him.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because the schedule makers do their best to try to get a variety of teams, but also keep some of the heavy hitters in there. But you don't want to see the same teams every single time. But, I mean, who could have predicted, right, like that the Jets would have lost Rodgers? And you brought that up. But, I mean, the Commanders were supposed to be better this year, and they're okay.
But the Giants,
I mean, that's the number one media market in the country.
Yep.
They made the playoffs last season.
I know.
Who could predict that they'd fall off a cliff? Now, some analysts would tell you, yeah, that was maybe some smoke and mirrors last season, especially once Saquon Barkley went down. But, I mean, you look at some of these games, they just don't know, and it just doesn't pan out. Teams you think are going to be good aren't. Teams that you thought would be bad sometimes are good. But you're right. There's like really probably less than 10 teams who are like must-watch football all the time.
And then after this week, you have the Bills hosting the Giants in prime time. And that's still a cool storyline with Brian Daboll coming back. And the Giants were a playoff team last year, but it got a lot less cool after the last couple of primetime games where the Giants put up 3 total points.
Somebody said they have like 2 offensive touchdowns.
Yeah,
It's
some
terrible.
ridiculous. So
Yeah. I don't know what's going on there. Dabes, love you, dude. Get it figured out. Joe Shane, I think he's good. Get it figured out, man.
yeah. And finally, Andy, news coming out that bars and restaurants can start serving booze at 8 in the morning for the Bills game for Bills fans to go get their drink on while watching the Bills. Morning drinking, Andy.
Oh, it's lovely.
That, well, first of all, you got to start with a Bloody Mary
Yep.
if you're going to do this right. You and I will be working.
And we'll
covering
start
the
with
game.
Bloody Marys.
And- right.
Kidding. Charter Communications.
Right. Non-alcoholic Bloody Marys.
Uh-huh. Isn't that just like V8 with some hot sauce in it?
Yeah, you get a can of Zing Zang Bloody Mary mix and pretend.
Yeah.
But I think we saw this coming. This is very Bills Mafia to be getting your drink on and it's your football team. You're going to want to get it going.
It helps the governor of New York State, Kathy
Sure did.
Hochul, is from Buffalo.
Right.
Yeah, she gets it. It's a drinking town with a sports problem, as we like to say.
Yeah, there you go.
So, people are going to be out and having fun. You got a 9:30 kickoff, so people want to wake up 8 o'clock in the morning, get yourself to your favorite local watering hole, have a few wings, some beers, some Bloody Marys.
I could see
It's a day.
I could see Bloody Mary and a beer in the morning, but eating wings in the morning, can't wrap my head around. But then you look at the afternoon schedule for around the NFL, and, talk about crappy primetime games. The schedule this week isn't anything great. So flip the red zone on when you get home and take a nap is what I would recommend.
I don't know. Do something productive, right?
No.
Like you're done with the game at like 12:30, 1 o'clock. You got all day. You go do something.
All right.
If
If you've been drinking all morning, I don't know how much you're going to do. But
clean your house. I don't know.
wow. I took that one personal. It sounds like you've been peeking through my windows that my house needs to be cleaned. Andy, we got a
I just know how you live, dude.
9:30 a.m. kickoff. Bills Jaguars coming up. Andy will be joining me after the game for the Buffalo End Zone post-game show, as we'll hear from coaches and players over in London. Andy and I will break down the game and then come at you with another podcast following the show, and then that will do it. And then John should be back the Wednesday after. For Andy Young, I'm Kevin Carroll. As always, thanks for joining us, everyone.